In the background, you see the Jacksonville, Florida train station. So here is the Silver Star. This is a little walk relaxation stop. Now, Jacksonville means a lot to me because that's where so much of my love of trains has come about. And I think I talked about it a little bit in one of the earlier episodes. My grandmother and I, actually first my aunt and I, but later on my grandmother and I, would get on right here and go from Jacksonville to Newark, New Jersey. Now, back in those days, it was a lot different. Right now, we've just got one train, and all they're doing is a little bit of refueling and also replenishing some water in the cars. But when I would do it, when I would travel with my grandmother and my aunt, we would come here with the Palmetto arriving just before midnight, 11:59 p.m. The Silver Star actually came in two sections. Train 82, which came up from Tampa via the Atlantic coastline and Orlando, and Train 92, which came from Miami via the seaboard all the way, and at one point on the Coleman-Auburndale cutoff, getting into Jacksonville. Now, they would combine the trains right here on this track behind us, and it was a great show getting to watch and see how they did that. The crews coming to plug up the HEP cables, make sure everything was working, and then, of course, refill the cars with water and the locomotives with diesel. Now, in those days, we had the F40PHs. The F40PHs would come up on the 92, and they would be the engines to take us all the way up to Washington, D.C. And the trains were long. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-plus cars between the 82 and the 92 that were combined. And it was always a madhouse. I could never have done a video like this then because there were always so many people on the platform, both getting off the Palmetto and getting onto the Silver Star. And the last thing I would see at night was the crossing flashers going up the Jacksonville Terminal sub toward Dinsmore, which is north of here, and Georgia, as I would just put the blanket over me and go to sleep and then wake up in South Carolina. So Jacksonville was a lot of fun. It's still a great city to come watch trains in. You've got Norfolk Southern, CSX obviously the biggest player, and Amtrak here as well, in addition to the Florida East Coast. And you can go just about everywhere in town to see some great railroad action. So if you have a chance, come on down to Jacksonville. And we'll talk a little bit more about what things were like in the 80s and the 90s with the long trains in the Graham-Claytor era and when Amtrak travel was truly in its golden era. Now, just a little bit to explain why, again, we're here. So I had to run in with the TSA. I didn't want the TSA to touch my genitalia in order to complete what they call a pat-down. It's not a pat-down. It's actually an invasive sexual procedure. This is not about trains, but what it does concern us as rail enthusiasts here is the fact that the TSA is an organization that has no regulation whatsoever. There is nothing that prevents them from attempting to do something equally insane on the rails, and as I talked about in one of my Brightline videos, I didn't like the fact that Brightline was doing a security screening there because that is creating the platform for something similar to come to our trains. And no, it is not about safety. It is not something that we as railroad passengers and we as American citizens should be involved with. That job goes to the government, and we pay taxes to do that without burdening us with that responsibility. So I want to make sure you know that, because there will most certainly be an effort to make sure that it does not come to the rails and that we're able to enjoy our transportation without being molested. And that's something that I and the rest of the folks at All Things Trains are going to make sure that we do. So sit back, relax. There will be more coming as we go up the line. And one last thing, we're on the Jacksonville Terminal subdivision of CSX's Jacksonville division. We'll be getting on the Nahunta sub just north of here. Once we hit the state line, or Dinsmore, Florida, as I mentioned before, we'll be taking the Nahunta sub up to, now let me see if I can remember my subdivision lines real quick. We'll be taking it up to Savannah area, where we'll get on the Savannah subdivision, and they actually have two east and west main lines. One is the former Seaboard, the other is the former ACL, depending on when the dispatcher sends us. And then we will get on the Columbia subdivision, and that's part of the Seaboard main line that carried this train, the Silver Star, and also the Silver Meteor, all the way up into Raleigh. So that's the basics, and we will see you later.